Gentleman to my right, your left, FBI Special Agent in Charge Scott Bruner, Justin White, Captain of the Sheriff's Department, Narcotic and Gang Division, U.S. Marshal Assistant Chief Deputy Joe Callahan on the far left, and then two prosecutors there. Left is David Rawls, next to Mr. O'Callahan, and then Kevin Mokhtari, Assistant United States Attorney. Those are the lead prosecutors on this case. We are here today to announce that for only the second time in the history of this district have we ever used the federal law known as the Crack House Statute. That's Title 21, Section 846A2. We've used that statute today to restore peace and safety to a neighborhood in Vista, California that has been terrorized by criminal activity at one crime-infested property. The elements, the elements of the offense are on the screen. One, that the defendant managed or controls a place or a location. Number two, the defendant did so as an owner. And number three, the defendant knowingly and intentionally made the location available for the purpose of storing, distributing, or using controlled substances. During the past 3 years, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department has been called to the 4-acre property at 725 Poinsettia Avenue in Vista, California, at least 53 times. You see an overhead photograph of the property outlined in red. As you can see right across the street, that large white building across the street to the top of the photograph, that is the Jolie Ann Leichtig Elementary School, 100 feet from this location. And we will absolutely not allow the alleged activity in this indictment to occur a mere 100 feet from an elementary school. These are other photographs of structures on the property. Early this morning, members of the North County Regional Gang Task Force, the FBI SWAT team, plus other law enforcement agencies, raided this property and arrested the owner, Sean Terrence Sheeter, S-H-E-E-T-E-R, based on a federal indictment charging him with a violation of Title 21, Section 856A2, the Crack House Statute. The government will seek forfeiture of this entire property under the authority of that statute. 5 other people were arrested and are still in custody from this morning's raid. According to the indictment and search warrant affidavits, Sheeter encouraged gang members, drug dealers, violent felons, and drug users to stay at the property in exchange for providing him with drugs. I cannot think of a more appropriate circumstance and facts for the application of this law. The 53 calls to the Sheriff's Department that I previously mentioned between January 1st of 2017 and February 25th of 2020 have included reports of stolen vehicles, burglary, grand theft, and vandalism. During this same period of time, there have been approximately 22 arrests and 7 citations issued at the property. The majority of the arrests relate to the possession of controlled substances or stolen vehicles, but several arrests have also been for felons in possession of firearms. At least 8 current or former residents at that property are under federal indictment. This prosecution is the final chapter of a multi-agency, long-term investigation led by the North County Regional Gang Task Force that began in November of 2016. It focused on heroin, methamphetamine, firearms trafficking, and money laundering by multiple North County gangs operating out of Oceanside Encinitas, San Marcos, Vista, Carlsbad, and Escondido. The 3-year investigation involved wiretaps, surveillance, and undercover drug and gun purchases, culminating in 15 separate federal indictments, including the one unsealed today, collectively charging a total of 29 defendants with drug trafficking and firearms offenses. In addition, dozens of kilos of heroin and methamphetamine were seized. 5 firearms, including AR-style assault weapons, were also seized. This neighborhood that we've been talking about today and the streets of San Diego County are safer because of the hard work and dedication of the law enforcement officers and prosecutors responsible for these 15 separate indictments. I am very proud of the lawyers from this office, Kevin Mokhtari and David Rawls, for the work that they have done with the North County Regional Gang Task Force. This gang task force is a model of what can be accomplished when you combine federal, state, and local resources, put them together in one place with dedicated federal prosecutors, and focus their efforts on removing gang members from our streets. This task force, led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the San Diego County Sheriff's Office, includes agents and officers from the following agencies: the Oceanside Police Department, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the Bureau of Prisons, Homeland Security Investigations, the U.S. Marshals Service, the California Highway Patrol, and the Escondido and Carlsbad Police Departments. I thank all of these departments for their great service with this task force. I remind you that an indictment is a formal allegation of criminal conduct which must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is presumed innocent under the law. I want to sincerely thank FBI Special Agent in Charge Scott Bruner and San Diego County Sheriff Bill Gore for their leadership of this task force and their great work on this case in particular. And now I'm proud to introduce Scott Bruner, the Special Agent in Charge of the San Diego FBI office. Scott?
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Bruner. As you heard, I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the San Diego Division of the FBI. The FBI is proud to be a member of the North County Regional Gang Task Force, working alongside our local, state, and federal partners to combat the gang threat which infests the streets of our county. I want to thank all the partners for their great work being done on the task force. Today's operation brings the conclusion of a long-term investigation led by our North County Regional Gang Task Force, a group of dedicated agents and officers making the streets of North County safer for the communities to work and live. The case began in November of 2016 and targeted documented members and their associates of violent North County gang street gangs operating out of Oceanside, Encinitas, San Marcos, Vista, Carlsbad, and Escondido. The investigation involved extensive surveillance and undercover drugs and gun purchases, several wiretaps, and other sophisticated investigative techniques, all worked jointly by the task force. It was a collective effort of FBI agents, deputies at the Sheriff's Department, officers at several, as you've seen, partner police departments, and federal agencies and prosecutors at the United States Attorney's Office, which brought 15 federal indictments, charging 29 defendants with drug trafficking and firearms offenses, while seizing 6 weapons and narcotics, including heroin and methamphetamine. Today, we're here to announce another significant impact born out of this investigation. Today, the North County Regional Gang Task Force has shut down the poinsettia property, shut down criminal activity, the dangerous drugs and weapon trafficking going on in and out of the house, shut down the drug use of the so-called heroin factory happening near one of our elementary schools. This is the prime example why law enforcement works so hard, why law enforcement brings resources together. to make our community safe for residents to work and live, so our children can safely play, learn, and be without fear. The FBI's Safe Streets and Gang Unit administrates 168 violent gang safe streets task forces nationwide, staffed by nearly 850 FBI special agents and more than 1,500 state and local law enforcement personnel, and nearly 100 federal law enforcement agencies are represented. One of the key facets of the Safe Streets Task Force is combining short-term, street-level enforcement activity with sophisticated techniques such as consensual monitoring, financial analysis, Title III wiretaps, and other significant sophisticated techniques to root out and prosecute the entire gang, from the street-level thugs and dealers up through the crew leaders and ultimately the gang's command structure. Here again, this successful operation by the North County Regional Gang Task Force, where criminal activity involving heroin, methamphetamine, firearms, and other dangerous crimes threatened our communities, has been shut down. For these reasons, the FBI continues to invest significant resources, agent personnel, and technical support to combat the gang and drug problem in San Diego. We at the FBI are proud to be part of the process of dismantling criminal gangs and shutting down criminal properties which infest our street with drugs, guns, and dangerous activity. Today, we made the streets of North County, San Diego, a safer place to be. And with that, I'd like to introduce Captain Justin White of the San Diego Sheriff's Department.
Hello, thank you everybody for coming today. Again, my name is Justin White. I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Narcotics and Gang Unit. And making sure the citizens of Vista, San Marcos, and the rest of San Diego County have a safe place to live is a priority of the San Diego Sheriff's Department. Over the past several years, residents on Poinsettia Avenue have had to experience the frustrations and the fear of living next to a property where the owner has allowed and facilitated criminal and drug activity. The negative effects of this activity on the quality of life in this Vista neighborhood is well documented. The community's desire to stop that criminal behavior is demonstrated by the more than 50 calls that the Sheriff's Department received since 2017. As mentioned earlier, these calls resulted in numerous arrests, the seizure of firearms, illegal drugs, and stolen property. I would like to commend the efforts of all the law enforcement agencies involved in this operation. The residents in question has been a drain on our community for years. While arrests by sheriff's deputies stopped some of the criminal activity occurring, the use of appropriate federal laws to permanently stop and the destructive effects of this nuisance house was due to the work of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, and the North County Regional Gangs Task Force. Here in San Diego County, we benefit by having a highly effective relationship between federal, state, and local law enforcement. The results of this investigation improve the quality of life in this Vista neighborhood and is a showcase of the mission of the Sheriff's Department in making San Diego County the safest neighbor or safest urban county in the nation. Thank you. Am I going there?
Thank you, Captain. It is now my practice to introduce to you Kevin Mokhtari, who is one of the lead prosecutors in this case. If the press has any questions, Kevin, please come forward. No one knows this case better than Mr. Mokhtari.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assistant United States Attorney Kevin Mokhtari. We have, if we go to the next slide here, a number of photos from this long-term investigation. As the various speakers have outlined, through the course of the investigation, the task force has looked at this property, whether it was looking at people who were operating from or living at the property, and more recently, specifically the property itself. In February 28, 2018, as set forth in the search warrant and the indictments and public materials, this property was actually raided by the FBI SWAT team as part of the initial takedown of this investigation, during which a number of the people who were charged were actually residing at the property. During the course of that search, the following photographs here are photos that were taken during the course of the search indicating drug use and drug distribution at the premises, at the property at 725 Poinsettia. As you can see from the left-hand side going right, There's various indicators, spoons, needles, that kind of stuff, which is consistent with obviously drug use. Today is almost 2 years to the date from when that FBI SWAT team hit the house. 2 years ago that happened, the activity has continued as set forth in our search warrant affidavits and other materials. But only a year ago, local San Diego Sheriff's Department folks also went to the property, and they, as you can see on the left-hand side, there's methamphetamine there set forth in our materials. At the premises as well, you can see that this activity had continued through, despite the fact that the FBI had raided them, had continued through early January 2019. During the course of our investigation, as you can see on the left-hand side is an AR-style assault rifle. This weapon was seized during the course of the investigation from an individual who was living at the property at 725 Poinsettia during the course of the wiretap and additional parts of the investigation. That weapon was seized, and the photo to the right is an image that was from that individual's cell phone pursuant to search warrants that we obtained. As you can see on the right-hand side, you see a white crystalline substance which is consistent with methamphetamine on a scale. Here are additional pictures of the same AR-style assault rifle that was seized from this individual who was operating from that property. During the course of the investigation, the individual was indicted and charged with offenses related to drug trafficking. He has since pled guilty. He's also charged with weapons, a felon in possession of ammunition with relation to this firearm. Here's another picture of a AR-style assault rifle. This was actually taken at the time that the assault rifle was seized from the individual who was, as public documents indicate, was a felon. And this is today. So 2 years later, the activity, as you can see here, continues. Just this morning, when the FBI SWAT team cleared the house, a search team entered, and as you can see on the left-hand side, you have numerous points, which is slang for needles, consistent with intravenous drug use, such as heroin. On the right-hand side, you have a high-capacity magazine that would go in an AR-style weapon, like you saw in the previous slides. On the left-hand side, in the garage area, you can see of the poinsettia, you have a pretty open drug use. Tin foils. Also, if you zoom in on the picture on the left, there are makeshift needles. It looks like almost like hollowed out pens with points for intravenous drug use as well. On the right-hand side, you see a pipe consistent with methamphetamine use. Again, numerous needles, all that kind of stuff. And on the left-hand side is a zoomed-in photo of what's on the right-hand side, which is, as you can see, it's a bed. And just below the bed, just open, is a box full of needles, again, in one of the rooms located in the Poinsettia property. Now, all of this stuff was documented as the search this morning. In addition, as the U.S. Attorney indicated, 5 individuals were arrested. In addition to those 5 individuals, the defendant in this case, Mr. Sheeter, was also arrested on the federal arrest warrant as a result of the indictment of this case. If there are any questions with regard to the specific charges or with regard to the poinsettia or the investigation, I'm happy to answer them if you have them.
Can you clarify about the second time that this crime statute has been applied to this particular situation? Because there has been a lot of houses that been harboring drugs, meth labs, and things like that that it hasn't applied this type of statute. Why is it that
Sure. So we looked into prior cases. This specific statute was enacted in 1986. Generally speaking, Congress enacted it to address homes and properties that were being used for the furtherance of drug trafficking activity. In 2003, the statute was amended. The specific section we're charging here was amended as it stands today in 2003. So in the past 17 years, we went back and looked. And in those 17 years, only one other time in this district have we charged a specific statute. The specific statute applies in a case like this, where it's not necessarily the owner who is doing distribution, it's not necessarily the owner who's manufacturing drugs, which would apply to your instance where someone is themselves cooking methamphetamine or something like that, but whereas an individual knows about it or is deliberately ignorant of it and allows it to continue. In this case, as alleged in the indictment, it's that the owner, Mr. Sheeter, the defendant here, knowingly and intentionally allowed individuals to operate there to distribute, store, and use controlled substances. In this case, specifically heroin and methamphetamine. In addition to that, this is actually the first time that this specific statute has been used for heroin and methamphetamine. The prior case that we have found was with regard to marijuana grow operation. So in terms of controlled substances, this is the first time a heroin and methamphetamine house has been applied for this statute.
Could you clarify, were they actually manufacturing the meth? And if so, is there a danger to the neighborhood as you guys try to clean up the property?
No, the allegation in the indictment is not a manufacturing allegation. The allegation is the storage, usage, and distribution of controlled substances. This statute does allow you to charge manufacturing as well. As you can imagine, sometimes there's manufacturing and storing, let's say like a meth laboratory. But in this case, that's not the allegation in the indictment.
And for layman's terms, can you talk about each indictment and the exposure that each one could bring?
Sure. Today we unsealed one federal indictment charging the defendant, Sean Terrence Sheeter, with maintaining a drug-involved premises in violation of Title 21 United States Code Section 856A2. That carries with it a 20-year maximum sentence and a maximum fine of $500,000. In addition, based on the indictment today, we're seeking criminal forfeiture of the 725 Poinsettia Avenue property.
Any other questions?
One more. Would you be able to put a price tag on all the stuff that you confiscated, the drugs, the weapons, everything about it, including the property, what you're taking, how much worth?
I don't have a specific price tag as to the contraband. As you can imagine, it doesn't have residual value, so I don't know what the value is. This area, probably based on public records, you'd be able to see fairly quickly the value of the homes in this area. But based on the information that we have in the search warrants, I don't have anything publicly that I can discuss. But that information is generally available. So.
Real quickly, can we clarify the arrests? And there were several over the last few years. But what happened today? How many people? I've got a couple of different numbers here.
Sure. Today on the federal indictment, the defendant, Sean Terrence Sheeter, was arrested, and he was given a notice to appear Friday, so he'll be making his court appearance this Friday. In addition to that, while the FBI SWAT team and the San Diego Sheriff's Department and other task force members were there searching and doing their law enforcement duties, they arrested 5 additional people. Not as part of the investigation per se, but people for narcotics-related charges, and as well as warrants, outstanding warrants. Once they made contact with them, they identified them and arrested them on outstanding narcotics-related warrants. During the course of the investigation, 29 total defendants were charged. The majority of those individuals have pled guilty. Many of them have been already sentenced. So 28 of the 29 have already been charged. Their cases are already pending. The 29th defendant is Mr. Sheeter, who was arrested today, and obviously his case is now beginning.
All 6 remain in custody?
Mr. Sheeter was given a notice to appear, so he'll be making his court appearance on Friday.
He's not in custody.
He was initially, he was arrested, he was in custody, and then he was released. Yes.
Why has the statute been so rarely used, and you plan to use it more after this?
I can, there's a couple things with regard to why it's been rarely used. It's a unique law enforcement tool. Obviously, you have to have a unique set of facts that would apply here. It most often is the case. You're going to have someone who is distributing drugs, running a grow operation or something like that, that's going to tip off law enforcement scrutiny. In this instance, the A2 section is not that you're personally distributing the drugs, but that you're knowledgeable about it and allowing it to continue. As you can see, as alleged in the indictment, it's not charged on a particular day, but starting at least May 2017 up to the date of the indictment, which was last week, so that's over the span of approximately 2 years, just under 2 years, this activity was alleged to have happened. So it's a unique set of facts, and obviously sometimes certain laws should be used sparingly, and other times they're more commonly applicable. In this case, it's less commonly applicable, but here we believe it's applicable based on the facts of the case.
Will this be applicable to owners of properties that have been rented for years and they've been using that as a drug and distribution, etc.? But the owner, knowing that it was going on, even though they were not there, will this be applicable?
The statute requires that the owner manage or control the property, which obviously in that case in your scenario would, but also requires them to knowingly allow that to occur. So in your scenario, it depends on their knowledge of the activity, whether or not it's applicable.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I again want to thank the FBI, the Marshal Service, and the Sheriff's Department for being here today. And want to thank all of the agencies as part of the North County Gang Task Force for all their great work. Thank you all for being here. This will end today's press conference. Thank you.